You're watching News 10, your connection in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 5.
Good evening, I'm Trish Close. Thanks for joining us tonight. Brian is off tonight. We begin our newscast tonight with some breaking news out of the community of Hornbrook. The entire community has been evacuated tonight after a fast-moving grass fire erupts in Siskiyou County. The fire has forced California Highway Patrol to close Interstate 5 from Ashland to Yreka. Take a look at this video one of our viewers sent in. We got word of the fire just before 2 o'clock this afternoon. CAL FIRE says crews say there is a lot of wind down there. It's pushing this fire, also creating dangerous conditions for firefighters. Joining me now on the phone is Susie Brady from CAL FIRE. Susie, thanks for joining us tonight. The entire community has been evacuated at this point. How many people are we talking about here?
I don't have exact numbers for you. What I can tell you is right now it's about 500 plus acres. We just extended our evacuation orders all the way from Hornbrook all the way up to Hilt, Coldstein Valley.
Okay, and then we just reported the interstate was closed down. What created that decision?
Basically, around about an hour ago, the fire has jumped I-5. We have fire on both sides of the freeway.
Yikes! And
you
were
have
mentioning
erratic winds up there. That's what's pushing this fire along with our dry vegetation.
Wow. Okay, you were mentioning to me earlier that this fire is changing dramatically. What kind of conditions are you guys dealing with right now?
So right now we're just trying to stay to protect homes as many as we can and to keep it from spreading anywhere further to the north.
Okay. Any idea how the fire started at this point?
No, currently it's still in our investigation.
Okay. What are the plans for you guys leading into this evening as far as the attack?
Well, nothing's going to change with what we're doing right now. We're bringing in more resources from down state and out of the county. We also have a couple of your Oregon Department of Forestry folks down here helping us. Nothing's going to change. We're going to, hit it hard with a lot of aircraft in the air and on ground with ground resources. We do want to let the folks know that we do have an evacuation shelter open at the Jackson Street School. And then for large animals, they can take them to the Siskiyou County Golden Fairgrounds.
And really, those drivers on the interstate should steer clear of this location, correct?
Correct. If you don't need to travel I-5, try to find a different route, either up to Oregon or down to Yreka or California. Please stay out of the area. Not needed to.
All right, Susie Brady with CAL FIRE. Susie, thanks for joining us tonight. You guys stay safe down there in Siskiyou County. As we mentioned, Interstate 5 is closed from Ashland to Yreka, and that's where we find News 10's Kimberly Colliner. We were sending her to this fire, and she got stuck. Kimberly, what can you tell us right now?
Yeah, Trish, right now I'm on mile marker 64 near the Hilt exit, and Caltrans tells me that I am just 2 miles away from where those flames are burning. They also tell me homes are engaged in this fire, and a huge concern for them just a few minutes ago. All of this stretch of the road, let me pan this whole stretch of the road filled with vehicles that were traveling southbound. Caltrans was able to let them reroute and turn around and start heading back northbound. Right now, as you can see, the winds are extremely strong, and that's what they were concerned with. We're told the fire has jumped the freeway, and they were worried that the fire was going to impact the cars that were at a standstill here. In just a few minutes, I have to move my car as well. I am on the bank of the highway, and I need to get out of here because, as I mentioned, that fire is less than 2 miles away from where I'm standing. We'll continue to update you tonight at 6 o'clock. With your connection live near Hornbrook, Kimberly Colliner, News 10.
All right, Kimberly, thank you. Here's what we know so far. A fast-moving wildfire evacuates the entire town of Hornbrook, California. Transportation crews, again, have closed Interstate 5 from Ashland to Yreka, so avoid that area if all possible. Traffic heading south into California is being stopped at exit 14. A shelter has been set up in Yreka at Jackson Street School. Large animal shelter is in place at the Siskiyou County Fairgrounds. We are following this story online and on our social media platforms. You can keep track of any new developments tonight regarding this fire at KTVL.com. Other breaking news we're following tonight. Fire crews called out to a structure fire in White City on Atlantic Avenue. Take a look. This is a live look from our tower cam here at the station. As you can see, heavy black smoke coming from that area. We're hearing reports of multiple engines heading that way. They're on scene now. At last report, crews were shutting down streets around Atlantic, including Antelope Road. We do have a crew on scene. We're hoping to bring you a live report from that scene as soon as it becomes available. Winds keep pushing the Klamathon fire, ripping through Siskiyou County, destroying homes and businesses. Hundreds forced to evacuate as the fire continues to move closer towards Oregon. Good evening, I'm Trish Close. Thanks for joining us. Brian is off tonight. Northern California choked by the thousands of acres burning in the Klamathon fire. News 10's Genevieve Grippo is live in Hornbrook now, where the entire town has been evacuated, that is. It's our top story tonight at 5. Genevieve, what can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right, Trish. This fire has basically taken over the towns of both Hilt and Hornbrook. CAL FIRE tells me that this fire started yesterday at just about 50 acres. It's now burning over 8,000 acres, and these are not clouds behind me. This is smoke, and I see at least half a dozen aircrafts coming around and around, basically doing laps, dropping retardant on these fires. Now, CAL FIRE tells me that they're taking a very aggressive approach to this fire, both on the ground and in the air. And they say that Mother Nature is really working against them today. They have some strong winds as they face those flames up to 30 to 40 miles an hour. And they say that aircraft is really going to be playing a huge part in the fight against these flames.
It's a great resource. It's invaluable. From the vantage point of the air, they're able to help guide crews into areas that are difficult access. They're able to see the fire behavior from a totally different vantage point than the guys on the ground.
I took a walk through a Hornbrook neighborhood earlier today, and it was just a scene of destruction. Several structures just totally burned down to the ground, and some streets are still covered in kind of this pinkish reddish substance, and that's leftover retardant that was dropped in that same area I was walking just yesterday. Now, currently, CAL FIRE tells me that those evacuation orders are still in effect. The I-5 is remaining open right now in both directions, but that could change at any time as the conditions of this fire change. But the exits for both Hornbrook and Hilt are remaining closed. We'll have another update for you coming up at 6 o'clock. We hope to have some more information then. Until that time, live here in Hornbrook at the Klamathon fire, Genevieve Grippo, News 10.
Genevieve, thank you for that information. Wildland Strike Team in Ashland has been activated to start heading out to Colstein Valley as a preventative measure in case the Klamathon fire begins to move towards the area. Now, again, this is just an in-case scenario. Does not mean the fire has reached that area. Crews from Jackson and Josephine counties are on their way to Colstein. And this just into our newsroom, Medford Fire Rescue has deployed a 2-person wildland crew as part of a task force from Jackson County to the Oregon-California border. Deputy Chief Justin Bates says they had a crew on standby ready to head over to the Klamathon fire if needed.
Usually they order what we call a strike team or a task force, which are usually 5 pieces of fire apparatus and then a leader, a chief who goes down there with them. So Medford specifically would only send one of those units.
Chief Bates says they make sure to try not to deplete our area from those resources just in case if something happens here. While the Klamathon fire has not reached Oregon, Jackson County search and rescue crews are urging hikers and other outdoor enthusiasts to avoid forested areas near the Oregon-California border. The areas of concern include the Pacific Crest Trail, Mount Ashland, and the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument. Crews are concerned people in remote areas may have difficulty receiving notices and evacuating quickly in the event it becomes necessary. Prevention is key. Search and rescue crews may be prohibited from engaging in search missions due to fire danger. Detour routes have not yet been established. U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management will coordinate further advisories and closures. And we continue our team coverage tonight with News 10's Kimberly Colliner. She's live a mile away from Hornbrook as Caltrans continues to monitor I-5 traffic. Kim, how's it looking out there?
That's right, Trish. As you can see, traffic continues to flow both south and northbound here on I-5. But Caltrans and ODOT tells me they're allowing through traffic with extreme caution. That's because, as Genevieve mentioned, those winds are picking up a great amount of speed and conditions are extremely dry out here. But take a look right beside me, a huge safety concern. Lots of smolders in this region. I'm going to zoom in close to one of them that's been spewing out flames. If it doesn't do so now, you could catch those flames on our Facebook Live, which I took just a couple of minutes ago. But these small spot fires are a huge concern for both road crews and CAL FIRE, but a much larger concern to the north side of the freeway, a much larger spot fire, which two bombers have been circling for the last 2 hours, as well as a number of helicopters. They've been going in and out to drop retardant on this spot fire. They mentioned that Because this area has much more vegetation, the likelihood for the fire to grow and to flow onto the freeway is much higher. That being said, if that spot fire continues to grow and is not tamed, it looks like they're doing a great job of managing it and getting it under control. I see there aren't many more flames spewing out of there, but if for some reason it starts up again, they're ready to close down the freeway at a moment's notice. We'll have those updates for you on our social media and during our 6 o'clock newscast. With your connection live in Hornbrook, Kimberly Colliner, News 10.
Kimberly, thank you. A man from Portland on his way to a family reunion in San Francisco when he was told by Oregon Department of Transportation I-5 was closed until further notice. He and his family have been staying in Ashland waiting for the interstate to open, but the freeway closure is not the only thing this Portland resident is worried about.
All these people are going to have to be going somewhere, right? All the southbound traffic is going to have to go somewhere, and since we're going to be northbound on Sunday, along with all the rest of the people, I thought it was just going to be a parking lot.
Now, as Kim mentioned, I-5 opened this morning, but some southern stretches of the freeway along Ashland are still clustered with semis. Here's what we know so far. The fire has burned more than 8,000 acres. It's 5% contained at this time. A shelter has been set up in Yreka at Jackson Street School. A large animal shelter also in place at the Siskiyou County Fairgrounds. One person has died near the fire area, but it has not been confirmed if that is fire related. Major evacuations still in effect for Hornbrook, north of Copco Road, and Fort Klamath Road from I-5 to Ager on all of Hornbrook City to and including Hilt and Colstein Valley. You can get the latest updates as we receive them on our website. That's KTVL.com. And the big issue for firefighters right now is wind. For the second day in a row, a red flag warning for high fire danger is in effect for parts of our region. Let's check in now with News 10 meteorologist Milt Radford here with a quick look at your weather. Milt.
Winds are not quite as gusty across our region today as what we saw yesterday, but we still have very dry conditions, low relative humidity levels, especially east of the Cascades. As a result of that, we have a red flag warning in effect until at least 8 p.m. this evening. That not only includes the east side, but into the Shasta Valley as well. We're looking at, here's some pictures from the I-5 summit, especially early this morning. You see a lot of that smoke that was out there. Some of that has lifted as the day has gone on. We're looking at temperatures mainly in the 70s and 80s across most of our inland regions right now. It's 85 degrees in Medford and in Montague currently, 60s out toward the coast. Tonight our lows will drop down into the 40s and 50s. We'll see some mostly clear skies overnight from clouds, but there could be a little bit of smoke still in certain locations, especially near that Oregon-California border. We'll have some calmer winds in our area tomorrow. Coming up, we'll take a look at that and some warmer temperatures headed our way.
Milt, thank you. From weather conditions to fire restrictions, you can get updates at KTVL.com.
A training flight over Ashland. His company speaks out about the capable pilot and military veteran. Plus, search crews find this truck in the Rogue River with a body inside. What investigators are saying now about this criminal investigation. And the caregiver who lost her life after the car she was driving runs over her in this bank parking lot. News 10 at 6 starts right now.
You're watching News 10, your connection in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 6.
Good evening, I'm Trish Close.
And I'm Brian Schnee. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a lot to get to. We're following a number of developing stories in our area for you. A new discovery in the case of Richard Hillman, missing for more than a year out of Josephine County. Yesterday afternoon, authorities found his Toyota pickup truck partially submerged near the Argo boat ramp near Galice. Inside, they found a body. Right now, an autopsy is scheduled to see if it's Hillman, but right now they are still calling it a homicide case. He went missing after a family Thanksgiving gathering in 2017.
We're learning more tonight about a woman who died today after the car she was driving rolled over her in a Medford parking lot. Medford police say 69-year-old Judy Griffin was a caregiver at Rogue Valley Manor and was conducting errands for residents at the time of the accident. It happened at the Banner Bank on Barnett Road at 10:30 this morning. We do have a live report coming up in just a few minutes.
We now know the name of the pilot who died in the fatal helicopter crash near Ashland. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office says it's 69-year-old Timothy Lyon of Port Boulevard, Texas. The crash site is in a steep wooded area southeast of I-5, exit 6, the interchange area. Lyon was a veteran pilot using a training aircraft based out of Medford Airport.
I mean, this is challenging news. Tim had been with our company for 19 years and had become part of the Erickson family, a core part of that. So it comes as a shock.
Tim Lyons flew for both the U.S. Marine Corps and Army Reserve from 1972 to 1992. The cause of this crash remains under investigation.
More on that crash in a moment, but first, continuing coverage tonight. The housing crisis in Southern Oregon is a constant issue, but is rent control the next step?
Local lawmakers are hoping they don't have to go there. News 10's Georgia Lawson is back in Medford from her trip to Salem and has the latest on ideas to address this issue.
Housing affordability was a big topic of conversation in Salem. Here in Medford, there is some progress being made, like the affordable housing complex under construction behind me on Ross Lane, but it, of course, will not fix the issue, so lawmakers are looking bigger.
In Jackson County alone, there are more than 7,000 people on the wait list for Section 8 vouchers, which provide help to those unable to pay their full rent. That number continues to grow, and lawmakers know it.
Certainly, there's no question that tenants are hurting. They're spending, in many cases, more than 50% of their income on rent, and that's not sustainable over time. And we have to be pragmatic about what solutions will actually produce for us. So it's going to be a big conversation.
There's been an effort, largely led by Representative Marsh's fellow Democrats, to impose a statewide cap on yearly rent increases, Senate Bill 608. But Marsh isn't convinced that a statewide approach to a neighborhood issue is the solution. In that sense, she aligns more with her local Republican counterparts.
I think we need to be looking for ways to incentivize developers to be able to build and build quickly and get them through some of the permitting processes so that they can actually get it done and we can get people into housing.
Senate Minority Leader Herman Burtsugar says the state government has played a role in creating the issue.
It's the regulations in Oregon. It's made it so hard for developers to develop and get things done that things aren't getting done.
But that doesn't mean the government can now pull back and stop acting. This session, the legislature is looking at a $400 million allocation for construction and home ownership programs. Representative Marsh is also introducing legislation that aims to maintain the current housing stock we already have.
While there may be talk on rent control, Southern Oregon legislators' eyes are on other fixes, while their voters wait to see the progress being made. With your connection, Georgia Lawson, News 10.
On top of a housing crisis, Medford police also warning Southern Oregonians not to fall for rental scams. We've been covering this story for a couple of weeks now. Police say scammers are using old photos of homes previously for sale or rent and creating a new ad. MPD recommends a few things, such as meeting the landlord in person, looking at the place first, looking for spelling errors, and speak to the person. Don't just text them. And always wiring money or dealing with cash is a red flag. And yes, you should always be subject to a credit check.
As we mentioned this morning, helicopter crews were still out circling the crash site of a fatal helicopter crash. Jackson County Sheriff's Office says it's a heavily wooded area and very steep, so it's hard to get to. Ericsson's chief of staff says the pilot was on a routine training flight. All pilots go through training flights regularly, and the chief of staff says this particular pilot was not new to the skies.
The pilot has minimum flight hours in order to get their license to perform missions and to operate an aircraft. And this particular pilot was very experienced in all those categories.
Jackson County Search and Rescue and other local agencies were able to locate the crash within a few hours yesterday after Ericsson provided a tracking beacon location that the helicopter had. Federal Aviation Administration was here this afternoon to continue the investigation. A lot of agencies called in to help locate this wreckage.
That's right. Joining us now on the phone, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Young with the Civil Air Patrol. Mark, thank you for joining us tonight. Can you tell us when the Civil Air Patrol was called in?
The Civil Air Patrol was notified yesterday about 3 p.m. to assist with radar forensics in looking through radar data to see if we could determine the exact location of the aircraft.
Now, Mark, we were talking earlier today on the phone. Specifically, how did Civil Air Patrol help locate this chopper? I know you said there's a couple of teams involved when trying to locate the exact location of where this happened.
Yeah, so we collect millions of radar targets across the United States, Mexico, and Canada all the time, and we keep the data for 14 days. And when aircraft goes missing, we come in and we sort through millions of targets in a particular area and location and time and try to sort out which one is that particular aircraft. And by doing that, we have some sophisticated software to do that with. Within about 30 minutes, we were able to sort out his last known position and relay that to the local authorities on a topo map that then they could go up to that area, and ended up, he was, I believe, within about 100 meters of that position.
All right. I'm sure there was a lot of good teamwork there. Mark, thank you so much for joining us again. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Young with Civil Air Patrol. Thanks again for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
Erickson Aviation uses the light helicopter for training, what they call proficiency flights, and it's based out of the Medford Airport. The pilot was attached to an international government program in Medford doing routine training, according to Erickson Aviation. So far, we know the helicopter took off from Medford around 8:45 a.m. The crash wasn't reported until about 3. Search and rescue crews reached the scene of the crash just after 6 p.m. The name of the pilot was released just before 12:30 today by Jackson County Sheriff's Office.
Now, this investigation continues on this crash. For any new developments, you can always stay tuned to KTVL.com.
We saw
And at 5, new developments tonight in a more than year-long search for a Grants Pass man who went missing after a family gathering.
And here are the first details about the Erickson pilot that fatally crashed in Jackson County.
Plus, the government shutdown continues. We ask members of Congress how safe America would be without a wall or barriers in place. News 10 at 5 is next.
In California, this is News 10 at 5.
Here's a live look at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. The debate continues as Congress works to reopen the government.
We'll have more on that in a few minutes. We're also getting new information tonight of a helicopter crash that killed an Erickson Aviation pilot.
We've teamed coverage this evening. News 10's Mike Marut spoke to the company of that plane crash. Meteorologist Autumn Robertson discusses whether the forecast could have played a role in that crash. Good evening. I'm Brian Schnee.
I'm Trish Close. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have a lot to get to right now. First, breaking news out of Josephine County. The truck belonging to a Grants Pass man missing for more than a year has been found with a body inside. It was discovered yesterday afternoon near the Argo boat launch. Oregon State Police says the truck belongs to Richard Hillman. He's been missing for more than a year. Right now, the medical examiner is conducting an autopsy to identify the man in that truck.
It was on the shore. It was probably 10 feet from the shore, 10 to 15 feet from the shore. I mean, it wasn't totally submerged, but it was up to the tires. We're not going to release any information until we're 100% sure who it is and how it came to this.
Right now, OSP considers this a homicide. Hillman was last seen at a Thanksgiving family gathering in 2017. At the anniversary of his disappearance, OSP told News 10 they believed Hillman was the victim of foul play. This is a developing story. We will release more details as they come in. Stay tuned to News 10 and KTVL.com for updates. We're learning more tonight about a woman who died today after the car she was in driving rolled over her in a Medford parking lot. Happened at the Banner Bank on Barnett Road at 10:30 this morning. Police say it looks like she got out of the vehicle when it started to roll backwards. That caused her to fall to the ground and she was wedged underneath. Medford police say the woman was a caregiver at Rogue Valley Manor and was conducting errands for residents at the time of the accident. She was taken to Rogue Regional Medical Center where she later died.
As we mentioned, total coverage tonight as we're learning more about the man who died in a helicopter crash in Ashland. Erickson Aviation says their veteran pilot, Tim Lyons, died on a training flight out of Medford yesterday afternoon. The 69-year-old from Port Boulevard, Texas, was an experienced and capable pilot. Lyons was a veteran, and he flew for both the U.S. Marine Corps and the Army Reserve from 1972 to 1992. The area where the chopper went down is rugged and densely wooded.
News 10's Mike Marut got as close as he could to the crash site this morning and talked with Erickson's chief of staff.
The crash that happened on Wednesday happened right in these woods, about 250 yards from the freeway. That's about the distance I am now from Interstate 5. This access road is actually the best place to try and see and access the crash site. But crews tell me it's still very steep and very heavily forested. And Erickson tells me this pilot was not a new pilot.
The pilot has minimum flight hours in order to get their license to perform missions and to operate an aircraft. And this particular pilot was very experienced in all those categories.
Chris Schultz tells me the pilot was on a routine training flight and says that the pilot took off at 8:45 and then by the afternoon had not returned to base, prompting a search by Jackson County Sheriff's Office and their search and rescue division. They found the pilot and the aircraft later on using a location receiver that is on all Erickson aircraft. With your connection to Jackson County, Mike Marute, News 10.
Erickson tells us he worked for the company for 19 years. There is still no word on how the crash happened or how or when the wreckage will be removed.
Erickson Aviation uses the light helicopter for training, what they call proficiency flights, and it is based out of the Medford Airport. The pilot was attached to an international government program in Medford doing routine training, according to Erickson Aviation. So far, we know the helicopter took off from Medford around 8:45 a.m. The crash wasn't reported until about 3 p.m. Search and rescue crews reached the scene of that crash just after 6. That was last night. The name of the pilot was released just before 12:30 today by Jackson County Sheriff's Office. While the weather yesterday was mostly quiet and calm, it could have played a factor in this crash.
News 10 meteorologist Autumn Robertson breaks down the conditions at the time the pilot was in the air.
Yesterday's weather was a bit quiet. It was kind of uneventful. We saw a little bit of showers throughout the area, but no heavy rain, no heavy winds, and no really severe weather. And even fog wasn't too much of a factor. We were seeing some lower visibilities. There was a low cloud deck over the Siskiyou Summit area that could have obstructed terrain just a bit. That could have played a factor in yesterday's crash. And our radar from yesterday not picking up too many returns. We weren't seeing much active weather as well, pretty much throughout the entire area. So our radar isn't showing much, but updrafts and downdrafts between some of the mountains could have gotten a bit strong during some parts of the day. That could have played a factor in the crash as well.
A number of our News 10 viewers have been commenting on the story on Facebook, expressing their condolences and prayers for the family. Here's just a couple. Tammy commented, "Rest in peace and prayers to his family. Need to find out why or if it's maintenance on the choppers." Clark says, "Wow, I saw a rescue chopper fly over when I was at Market of Choice." This crash is still under investigation. For future developments on this story, be sure to log on to KTVL.com for updates.